Hey, this is Jeff Hansen in Silicon Valley.
This is Arvin Predis in Los Angeles, California.
How you doing, Arvin?
Doing good. How are you?
You know what? Thank you for asking. I'm doing really well. So we're both active full-time real estate brokers with a combined 40 years of experience, and we're here to share um, some things that we've learned on best practices and start an engaged community so we can all become more successful. So the topic today that's on my mind, because I just had an appraisal on a listing a couple days ago, and actually literally right before we started this, I got a text that the appraisal came in, which is good news. But the topic of appraisals and best practices for us as agents. So Arvin, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with you. What's on your mind?
I kind of want to start at the beginning because some people may not know what an appraisal is and what it's for. So when someone's in contract to buy a home and they're getting a loan, the bank is pretty much goes through a third party for them to hire an appraiser to go to the property to make sure that the home is worth the price that the buyer is in contract for, right? And because of that, there can be some challenges, especially when, actually for a few reasons, if it's kind of a crazy market and there's a ton of buyers and people are having to overbid, or if there just aren't any good comps around and no one really knows how much this home is actually worth. So yeah, I think it's important to know what the appraisal is for and some of the pitfalls that people go through.
That's a good thing to go back to basics. And it's also a reminder that even though we know what all this is, to go through all that with clients, right? To explain to them. And we also might have agents on the other side that are brand new or haven't done many deals that might have to get the whole picture, right? But yeah, right. It's very regular that clients don't quite understand the purpose of the appraisal, what it means. Also, just along those lines, I've found that clients, buyers and sellers think, well, here, they're going to tell us what the house is worth. So it's good to explain to them that that's not really the case. It's more, in fact, the way I like to explain it is the appraisal is sort of a yes or no question. It's because the appraiser knows what the contract price is. So the appraiser is being asked, is it worth this value that we're in contract for? Yes or no? And if it's a no, what is it worth? And preparing clients that there's no, I've had transactions where I'm sure it's going to appraise and it doesn't. It hasn't happened lately, and then ones where I'm really worried about and it comes in a value. So just that's a good way to prepare clients. That hard to predict, right? No, hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
And then one thing I was thinking about, because this is what I was doing, was dealing with, well, it used to, I mean, I've been doing this a long time. So it used to be that the lender would have direct contact with the appraiser. Now they have to go, after the meltdown in 2008, they have to go through a third party. So the lender can't choose the appraiser in most cases, can't talk to them. We're the one that talks to them, especially when we're the listing agent. Actually, one thing around that is, personally, you tell me what you like to do, but for me, whether I'm the listing agent or the buyer's agent, I want them to make me the point of contact for entry, because I want to be there when the appraiser goes in, even though it takes a little more time, but I want to physically be there for a number of reasons. What's your thought about that?
The reason why I like to be the point in contact is because a lot of realtors sometimes don't pick up the phone. And a lot of times we're on a deadline. So people are missing calls, and a lot of times they're calling from unknown numbers. Sometimes it's from a private number. They're using a Google Voice number that doesn't look familiar. So I want to be the point of contact so I have control, so I can keep things moving and coordinate things, because a lot of times everybody's just so busy that they don't even really, want to pick up their phone for anything because they're just too busy with other things.
Yep, totally true. I hadn't even thought about that, but yeah, just getting them in, making sure that it gets done. Where, I mean, kind of with everything in a transaction, don't count on the other agent, right? Better if you have some control yourself. The other thing that was on my mind was how to. So do you typically try and meet the appraiser there?
Definitely, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Buyer or seller?
Buyer or seller, yeah. And a lot of, I don't know, I think my past experiences, a lot of times if the buyer's agent, a lot of times they don't even want to be there for the appraisal. A lot of times realtors just, period, they don't want to be there for the appraisal, which is a crucial part in a transaction, whether it's a slow market or a busy market.
Yeah, even if there are no contingencies, it shouldn't be a problem. But I've seen situations where it has, and you don't want, I mean, it's easier all the way around if the appraisal comes in, right? Easier for everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's true. I've same thing. I've had a lot of agents on the side that are like, oh, you'll meet them? Oh, great, because it could freeze up their day. Obviously, it takes time. But if you look, to me, if I look at the things that are really key in the transaction, that's one of the most key elements. Partially because I feel like if I didn't go and there's an appraisal problem, it's a little bit on me. So what would you, what do you like to do with the appraiser when you meet them there at the property?
Well, how about, let me ask you this first, with your all of your
Riddle me
experience
this.
in real estate, what are you allowed to discuss with an appraiser and what are you not allowed to discuss with an appraiser? Because that I don't think gets taught really in a lot of classes because of everything, all the shady things that happened with appraisers, back in the day, and now with all these new guidelines, it's kind of interesting, like how you're supposed to even talk to them.
Well, I wouldn't have thought of that, but I don't think I mean, I don't think there's anything legally you can't tell them. You can tell them whatever you want. I mean, that's kind of the
Okay.
problem, is that some agents tell them all the wrong things or too much. I think agents generally, like, there's a lockbox, just go, you can get in. Like, they don't do
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Or they do too much. Like, I've seen agents, and either that I managed or did deals with or something, that went and pulled up all these comps, and they're gonna like educate the appraiser on what the market's like. Which is not helpful, because the appraisers, I mean, they have kind of control. They're coming, like, they're the expert, right? And they're always
Yeah.
expecting people to try and enroll them in changing their opinion to come in at the value. Every appraisal they do, someone's trying to convince them of something, right? So just don't
Yep.
buy into that. So I want to tell them the things that are good about the property. In fact, this last appraisal, I printed up a little sheet, even though it's in the MLS. I printed up the benefits of the condo. Like, if it's an HOA, the HOA phone number, because they're going to need that. HOA, they need the HOA information. And then what's unique about this unit, like this one this happened to be a condo the other day, but that particular one had an extra parking space. It had some things that were more beneficial than the last comp in the complex. And you also don't know if they've run their comps yet. So when I met him at the property, I asked him, have you looked up what sold here recently? He's like, yeah, I haven't looked it up yet. Sometimes they do all that ahead of time. Sometimes they go in person and do that. But just a simple little sheet like that, I think, is good to not hit them over the head, but just here's some information. And I definitely wouldn't ask them, so we're going to come in at value, right? Maybe say, if it's, and start a conversation, just about how they're doing. Because it's kind of like, they're almost like a meter maid that gives you a parking ticket, right? Nobody likes the meter maid. Nobody really likes appraisers. Sorry if appraisers are watching this, but agents view them as something, this annoying thing we have to deal with. And so just having a nice conversation, getting to know them a little bit, really, I've found I have a very high percent of appraisals coming. I think part of it is just them knowing, okay, there's a normal person involved. So maybe it's not an outlandish price that we're looking at here. And but I don't try and influence them. I would just be helpful. Here's some things you might not know about the property, or you may not know that it's these elements about the street, what's unique about the street or something, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I kind of think about, yeah, what is the role of the realtor when they meet with an appraiser at a property? And I guess we're just there to kind of be helpful, because I usually ask the appraiser, are you familiar with this neighborhood? Are you familiar with this complex, if it's a condo or a townhome? Are you familiar with just kind of what the market is doing in this area? And I kind of, while I want to supply them with information, I also want to get a sense for how this is going to go, like what the end result is going to be. So I do like to ask them, so what do you think about this place? I mean, do you kind of have a good sense of where we're at, type of thing? Because I kind of want to know ahead of time and get a feel for it. And sometimes, yeah, like it comes, the result is different than what maybe they would tell you at the property, because they are going to run comps back at their office if they haven't already. So yeah, especially when there are multiple offers and it's going quite above list price, and everybody's kind of worried, and you've got this deadline, and you're supposed to get the appraisal, remove that contingency in like 3 days.
Yeah.
So it can definitely be kind of stressful. And I think that's something that realtors do, is kind of try to get a sense for what's going to happen.
But there's an artful way. I like how you said that. I forget the words you used, but I like that. A phrase I use is, so do you think we're gonna have any problems here?
Yeah.
You know, do you think we're gonna, I'm just curious, do you think you're gonna have any problems with this one? Or, and they're like, I don't know. Or, oh, this is, I've had cases where they're like very surly and not friendly. I'm like, you have any problems? Or, oh no, this is a slam dunk, no problem. Okay, that's the nicest I know. And if they're, if they do have problems, then I would ask, just these are asking questions. If you're asking questions, that you're not beating them over the head. So just asking, well, what other information would be helpful, right? What other, have you, which comps are you using? I'm just curious. And maybe you dig into it a little bit if they're comfortable with that, and if they already have run those. Well, you know, maybe have a couple. Go ahead.
And we have appraisers that call us from previous sales, right? Because they're doing another appraisal on a different transaction that you're not a part of, but they just are gathering information to help them, you know, with a different, you know, transaction. So you know, they're also trying to gather information. So yeah, when they're asking you about things, yeah, it's definitely helpful to just give them the information that they're asking for. But yeah, not really get in their way. You don't want to make the appraiser's life tougher during that 20-minute period.
No. And you don't need to be showing them around. Oh, did you see the kitchen? Look at this, look at that, like a little bit. But I also think appraisers, I mean, they're kind of lone rangers. They like kind of doing their own thing. And I found kind of mirror and matching them. If they're really chatty, then be chatty. If they're not a talker, don't overtalk them. It's just going to bug them. Some people you can just tell, I'm here, I'm gonna take the measurements, I'm gonna get it done, you know, so have a little conversation. But basically the first rule almost in anything is just don't piss them off, right? Don't make life harder for them.
Yeah.
Which can easily happen, right? And make the, like, you find out where the access point, so make the access easy as possible for them.
Yeah. Yep. I do remember one appraiser where he looked around. I let him through this place. He looked around. He sits down at the kitchen table and he says, okay, he looks at his paperwork. He's like, tell me why this home is worth this price. And the thing is, you know, all appraisers, just like realtors, are all different. They all have different personalities. They all go all go about things differently. They all do their research probably a little differently. So yeah, it's you kind of have to feel them out a little bit if you're going to be meeting them at the property.
But if you started out answering that question and they didn't ask it, like if they asked you, hey, justify this price. Okay, well, here's how I can justify it. So be prepared, obviously. But if they don't ask, you don't want to go in and tell them, hey, here's why it's worth every penny of this price.
Yeah, well, also what you say might hurt the whole thing, you know?
Totally. Yeah, do no harm is the first rule. The other thing that is good to share too is if there are multiple offers, either side that you're on, share that with them. If there were 4 offers, and if you're the buyer or the seller side, and you know the second closest was just 3,000 less, just so you're aware, you know, so they're aware what the competition is either. Yeah, for sure. And then
you do get those cases also where they where you're talking to them, they're like, oh, I've done like 4 of these in the past 3 months. I've done this exact development. I've done this exact building. I know exactly what's going on here. And, you know, they're just like, yeah, aren't going to be any issues with any of these appraisals. So that's you know, I don't know how often that happens, but it's happened a few times, you know, in my experience, I guess.
Yeah, I know the neighborhood. I'm very familiar. Almost inside that, some appraisals are a little condescending. Like, I know what I'm doing. So I definitely don't want to get offended or upset or anything. There's no point in that. Like, okay, great. That's wonderful. I'm glad you're such an expert. You know, even if I know more about the neighborhood than they might. Yeah, I'm glad you're familiar with this development. Good for you, or this street or this community, right? That's great. One final question to ask them is, anything else I can help with? Any other information you could use? And lots of times, like this guy called me back and wanted to, he needed some more info from the HOA, like the % of renters and some other stuff. So I got that to him quickly, which is helpful. Now, maybe one last thing to cover, if an appraisal doesn't come in, kind of what to do. It's somewhat limited options. I did have an appraisal once where we looked at the appraisal. Well, you can challenge appraisals. Right. It's kind of tough to get them changed. I did have one where they said it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and it came in low. So we sent that, corrected that with them when they upped the price. It was still a little bit, this is like 10 years ago, still a little bit below the contract price, but definitely helped get it up a little bit. And can you think of a deal where it didn't appraise and there was a problem?
Yeah, I mean, not one specific home in mind, but definitely a few times. And you brought up a good point. When it does come in low, you actually should, as a realtor, look through the entire appraisal report, review it, see what properties they used as comparables, and figure out if they went about it the right way or the wrong way, or they missed one, or they, like sometimes appraisers make mistakes. They're not perfect people either. And you want to make sure that they kind of use the right information to get to their price. And part of that is reviewing the entire report, which is a pain because there are multiple pages. But if it doesn't come at appraised value, you kind of have to do that.
Your client's gonna either side. Yeah, your client's gonna want that.
Yeah.
For sure.
So when it appraises low, though, what are some the things the options that we have? I guess if we're a buyer, if we're representing a buyer and it appraises low, I mean, let's say it's just kind of a standard offer, standard contract with normal contingencies. Some of the options we have are either making up the difference and moving forward with the transaction, backing out completely, back out of the home, or trying to negotiate with the seller and split the difference.
Split the difference. Have the seller come all the way down. I mean, but this is also good to prep the buyer too. Like, hey, we might have to just make up the difference. We don't know, and it's not a good indicator of the price. There is one other option, which would be to get a new appraisal, but typically you have to start with a whole new lender. I did that once actually, where we changed lenders completely. If you're using the same lender, you can't get a different appraisal from them, but you can completely change gears. The listing side would have to be okay with extending, right? It's a bummer for the lender, especially if it's a lender you recommended. But the problem there is that it could come even lower. You don't know, right? Hopefully it's better, but it could be lower. But
yeah, that is a risk.
I've been blessed with, I can't even remember the last time an appraisal didn't come in and it was a problem. But I do think it definitely helps being there and with the appraiser, and obviously not drastically overpaying for the property too. Well, wrapping up, final thoughts.
Final thoughts is my final thought is, in a transaction, be involved as much as possible, just in case the other party, the other realtor, is not. Because if they're just too busy and they're not around, they're not there to provide access, they're not there to stick to the timelines. Be involved with the transaction and care about it so that things will just go more smoothly and in your client's favor.
Do your job.
Do your job.
Do your job. Do a good job. Be hands-on, because it's rare. One other little thing I'll add is write down where, because you're out, you're about, you're at a property, you're somewhere, and you get a call from the appraiser. I always write down their phone number because I'll never find it again later. And you might need to find it later in the transaction, like if you need to follow up with about something about the appraisal, or even future deals. I've looked up and said, oh, that I think it's familiar. Oh yeah, I worked with that appraiser on this other property. So I use Evernote, but you put it somewhere where you can get back to it later. So try and keep the appraiser's info just in case. So anyway, well, I guess that's it for now. That's appraisals. Is that 101 or 102? Is that advanced or intermediate? Or
I think that's 101. That's appraisal 101. I think that's, yeah, definitely.
It's not rocket science, but it makes a difference. So here's my thought for the day. You'll love this, Arvin. Take care, but take chances.
Ooh, I like that.
What's your thought for the day?
My thought of the day is just get it done.
Do your thing.
Do your thing and get it done.
Do your thing and get it done. Okay, everybody. Hope this is helpful. And we'll look forward to seeing you on our next video, and let us know any way we can be of help with referrals in either the Los Angeles region or Northern California. Take care.